My name is Christopher Maider. I want to thank Hal and everybody for inviting me to be here today. When I was asked to speak here, I told my wife what was going on. She said to me, she says, "What makes you so qualified to talk about wind power?" That's a good question. Once I started doing the research, it was unbelievable the amount of information that's actually out there. And I thought about what does make me qualified. Well, one of the things that makes me qualified is, years ago, I was on radio. I've done a lot of public speaking pretty much my entire life. I used to be a front man in a rock and roll band. I've got several songs in the Library of Congress that are copywritten. And so one of the things I've learned is that everything is 80% preparation, 20% execution, and sometimes you have things go wrong, like at the last minute things are going to go wrong. Practice, 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 so that when you finally get out there, it becomes a lot easier to put on the show. I'm a writer for the Lexington Green, which is on blogspot.com. That is my website. And I run a YouTube page called The Meat and Potato Show, Conservative Talk and Awesome Rock. And Hal and I met basically through the social network, and he was basically putting out an open ad looking for somebody to come and speak today. So I decided that I'd put my name in, and he accepted. And again, thank you. So let's get started. In 1977, Jimmy Carter gave his famous malaise speech. The speech is titled Crisis of Confidence. One of the things he talked about was not only the sagging economy, but he basically told America that we would run out of oil in about 30 years. I was about, 13, 14 at the time? I believed him. I was being raised in a Kennedy liberal household. My mother worked on John Kennedy's Senate campaign, and everybody in my family has voted Democrat. Many people in my family are so left-wing that Karl Marx had to move down a seat. So one of the things that Jimmy Carter did, in his administration, and I'm currently reading the White House Diaries, Jimmy Carter's White House Diaries, fascinating book, is he started the Department of Energy. Another thing that he put into play was he started some of the first of the tax subsidies and the tax credits for alternative energy. And I remember that time. Again, I was being raised in a liberal household, so one of the things I did is I went down to the library. I got all sorts of books on solar power. How to build your old solar power bathtub to a wind-powered air conditioner. One of the things, and again, all the subsidies were not necessarily being pushed for a national usage, much like we see today. Wind power, solar power, it works best on a personal level. If you want to put a solar panels on your house or on your building, your business, that's fine. That's your business, it's your house, it's your property. And yes, it will make a difference in your energy bill, guaranteed. Doing it on a national scale is a different story. One of the things I'm going to talk about is how wind power is, how it's not only is it being nationalized, but it's spreading across into communities like this. It's not that far out of the realm to think in a few years that we could look out this window and see turbines in the distance. These things are big. They're huge. There's all sorts of health problems going on with them. There's all sorts of visual problems going on, and I'll get into that in a minute. Now, building wind turbines out in the desert, out in the ocean, maybe large prairie tracts, okay, I can understand that. Okay, the land is wide open. We're talking thousands of acres that's available to people. But what I'm going to talk about is a couple of towns and a couple of communities where basically they've been duped into having wind power put into their communities. Falmouth, Mass, you had mentioned Falmouth, Mass. That's another community there, and there's all sorts of health problems. It's very important that we talk about what type of wind turbines that there are. There's basically three groups. There's the 1.5 megawatt, the 2.5 megawatt, and the 4.1 megawatt. Now, these all rise in scale, so it's conceivable that you could have a 1.6, a 1.65, a 1.7. Same thing here, a 2.6, a 2.8, all the way up. The most commonly used one is 1.5. These things are about 200 to 300 feet tall. They're the most widely used. They're adaptable to all sorts of wind conditions. Heavy gusts, steady breezes. Most of the parts are produced for these. They're kind of like the Chevy truck of wind turbines. There's anywhere from 20 to 50,000 of these worldwide. And that's old data. That's from like 2008. I couldn't get anything newer. 2.5, Taylor County, Texas, completed in 2008 by Florida Power and Light Energy. Largest wind farm here in the United States, 2.5 megawatts. These things are almost 400 feet tall. These are the big boys. These are the Cadillacs. These are primarily offshore, and because of the gusting of the wind offshore, they have a different gearing system. As I said, these things are huge. There are some towers that are in excess of 400 to 600 feet tall. That's just the tower. On top of the tower is what is known as the nacelle. The nacelle is about the size of a city bus. Weighs about 56 tons. Oh yeah, a lot. Each blade can run anywhere from to 120 to 150 feet long, depending on which one. And again, like I said, these all rise in between, so it's 1.61. You see, they get bigger and bigger as they go along. Each of the blades can weigh anywhere from 30 to 40 tons each. The towers themselves, once assembled, once completed, 160, 180 tons. These things are huge. In order to construct a wind tower, let's take one of the biggest ones. We're talking a concrete hole about 30 feet deep. And it's an octagonal hole. Goes down about 30 feet deep. Sometimes it has to be blasted into the bedrock. The bedrock is blown out. What happens when we use dynamite? We create slag. Everybody knows anything about mining. Slag is the waste material that comes out of digging a hole. There's a difference between topsoil and clay soil, and then you get deeper down. This stuff has to be remediated or removed. In fact, the concrete that is used in some of these can be in excess of 3,500 cubic yards of concrete. That's huge. That would be enough probably to pour the entire foundation of this entire building. But it's put into a hole that's about maybe 50 feet across and 30 feet deep. Tons of rebar, which all has to be produced. And by the way, as we all know, concrete is one of the largest emitters of CO2. Probably right up there in the top 5. How many did I say these are worldwide? 20 to 50,000. And that's just this one. That's just the 1.5, the Chevy truck of wind tower. All that concrete, all over the place. Huge CO2 emitter. So we have the concrete, the rebar. Now you have to have a road. You have to construct a road to get up there. Most of the road is, because it's an access road, it's not going to be paved. It's just going to be a gravel road. And what happens when it rains on a gravel road? Okay? Runs down into the main street, runs into the culverts, runs into the water system. So you've got all the concrete, all the rebar. You have to build a road, which means you have to cut down trees, clear land. I thought we were trying to improve the environment here. Okay. Let's say you're on a mountaintop. Well, you have to cut a road, cut down more trees. Well, what happens when the trees grow back? Well, you have to spray herbicide. Well, I thought you were trying to protect the environment. The towers, once they're erected, actually, excuse me, I digress. When the concrete is put up and the towers have to come through, they're unbelievably large. I wish we had some way to scale it here. Picture in your mind probably one of the largest pine trees out there. That's just a section of the tower. One section. They're usually built in 3 to 4 sections. It's usually hauled on a huge semi. In fact, there were some areas in England during where it's called Askham, the Askham wind farm in England. It's up in the Lake Country. They actually had to remove historic homes. The hedgerows that are famous in Britain and Europe, Many people know about the World War II fighting and the hedgerows. They all had to be cut down, cleared out, brand new road put through, going through there. They all had to be taken down. Again, I thought we're trying to improve the environment here. Now, once these towers are erected, there's a couple of problems. They're so big, the blades are so long, that if you took one of these larger ones, end to end on the blade, and that circle, it's over 1 acre. 1 acre, that big spinning is 1 acre. It's not a few hundred feet, it's an acre. It's huge. Spins anywhere between 100, on a slow day 100 miles an hour, on a good day with wind, top speed 180 miles an hour. Spinning over an acre. It's gigantic. You stand next to them, it's a constant in a rainstorm. And you know how rain is around here. It's not like, oh, it rains and then that's it. No, it'll rain for days. It'll be misty. You know these days we get in New England, misty, murky days, foggy. It's like a jet plane because of that low air pressure beating against the blades. It's like a jet airplane. The constant roar, the vibration. These towers, again, in a desert situation, in a prairie situation, and I'll even say in a wilderness situation, even though I'm not all for cutting down the trees and building roads and using herbicide, I can understand, okay, you put them far away, they're out there, nobody really sees them, you build some transmission lines, that's fine. But a lot of these towers are being built in communities. I was telling Bill on my way over here, where I live in Worcester, there's one tower right literally a few hundred yards down the road from where I live. It powers a Catholic school that's right up the street. It's huge. You can see it from all over the city. You can be anywhere in the city and you can see it. It's ginormous. It's unbelievable. So when these blades are spinning at anywhere between 100 and 150 miles an hour, it causes problems with things like not only the wildlife, but there's this phenomenon. And I'll get into the Falmouth thing in a second, because this is one of the problems the people down there are complaining about. There's a strobing effect. If you have a wind tower, and the sun is either rising up behind it, or the sun is going down behind it, that tower is going to cast a shadow. And as we all know, when the morning and the afternoon comes, shadows get long. So you can be standing there and your shadow is like 10, 12 feet long. Now imagine you have a 400, 500, 600-foot wind tower with blades that are 150 feet long each, and it's spinning. What you get over a half a mile away, say there's a house or a community, you get this large shadowing, constant shadowing. And it's like a strobe effect. And if the wind picks up, it's like being at a rock concert. Lights. Imagine if we had a dimmer here and I just went like this with the lights. After a few minutes, you'd be like, stop that. Now imagine you have to live with this day after day after day. In fact, one of the problems with some of the wind farms that are going up in communities, and some people, there's a lot of depressed farmland out there, a lot of people are trying to get leases. You know, you can't blame them. They need some extra money to help pay the bills. Property values plummet anywhere from 25 to 35%. There are some homes in adjacent to these wind farms, the realtors have been sitting on them for anywhere from 2 to 5 years. They're empty. The houses are literally dilapidated now because obviously nobody lives there, so the lawn doesn't get mowed and the windows don't get washed and the driveway doesn't get plowed. They can't sell the house because there's a wind turbine right over there. Again, out in the prairie, out in the woods, out in the desert, fine. Another problem is the setbacks. There are no state and federal regulations for setback. And if nobody understands what a setback is basically you can't build something within X amount of feet from either your neighbor or a wetland or a road. It's called a setback. Things have to be set back a ways. It has to blend in with the environment, has to blend in with the community. You can't paint your house orange and put on 6 stories in the middle of a neighborhood. I mean, there's certain zoning rules. There are no federal and state setback regulations for wind towers. Communities have to decide that for themselves, and many communities are woefully inexperienced at doing this. They tend to rely on their standard. Well, if we have a fact, we do have an industrial park over here, and it's set back from the neighborhood 2,000 to 3,000 feet, or 1,600 feet. Well, that's different. You know, a factory, you can build hedges and kind of block out the factory and, you know, not really see it. Same thing with a highway. Highway can be put through, and you can do plantings and those sound walls. These towers are gigantic. So you basically look out your window, and first of all, you see the tower, the conical tower, and you have these huge blades spinning, and it's not just one. People want to put in anywhere. In order to make a wind farm viable, you need a minimum of 20 towers, a minimum. Wow. Like I said, the one that's in Worcester, it's only a singular one, but it powers, it just supplements the power for the Catholic school. And that's private property, that's a private Catholic school, they can do whatever they want, that's fine. But if that was to be a commercial operation, you would need at least 20 of those towers. And that's in the middle of a community. Now let me get to what's happening in some of the communities. This great documentary my wife and I watched the other night. I was telling you over here how my wife and I like to watch a lot of television. There is a community in Delaware County, New York. The town is called Meredith. Used to be a big dairy area back in the 60s. Now it's, of course, it's, you know, mostly hay farming, and, you know, there's a few dairy farms there, but it's not like it used to be back in the 50s and 60s. Company called, an Irish company, called Airtricity, started snooping around the town. Well, I'll get to it in a minute. Wait till you hear this. They're snooping around in the town, and what they do is they go to the public records, obviously, and they find out who's in the most trouble financially, who owes the taxes. They approach these people first, and they say, "Oh, you've got nice acreage out here. How would you like to have a lease to have a wind tower put up?" Asking price is $5,000. $5,000 just to sign a tentative agreement. They'll hand you $5,000. But you got to be quiet. Don't tell your neighbor. Don't tell your neighbor. Well, interestingly enough, these representatives are going over to the neighbor and doing the same thing. Because they want to get these tentative leases. They want to buy the land in a group. They want to get everybody grouped together. Another thing that they do, now these people are called prospectors. Another interesting thing that they do is they'll not only find out who's in the worst financial shape, is they'll find out who are on the board, the city councils. Who are the business owners? Who are the landowners? Who are the people writing the checks and deciding at the city council meeting? And they go after them. Now, most people, probably not a lot of people in here, I attend my city council meeting as often as I can. A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't. They tend to be boring. I know. We've all been to them. They can be nauseatingly boring sometimes. So they actually depend on this. They actually depend on people not showing up at these city council meetings. And what happens is they vote in. They say, "Oh yeah, we're going to put a wind farm on Joe's land and Sue's land and Bob's land, and we're going to hook them all up." All in favor? Well, we're all on the board. So people wake up the next day and quite literally there's semis going down the street carrying turbine parts. And by then it's too late. The leases have already been sold. Now in Meredith, New York, that very same thing happened. In fact, the town lawyer actually rewrote the town's zoning statutes so that she could have these wind towers installed in the town of Meredith. The lawyer for the town of Meredith on the city council rewrote the zoning laws so that they could have the towers. What ended up happening is a small group of citizens got together and they formed a 501c, 3 or 4, I forget what it was. You know, the non-profit charity, not-for-profit, not a charity, but an activist group. They called it the Citizens Alliance for Meredith. What they started to do is they started to get everybody involved in the town. they actually ran for city council. Not only were they able to completely have everybody on the town board and the city council thrown out, they got voted in, the new people got voted in. Very first thing they did was cancel all the leases for electricity in Ireland. Unbelievable story. The documentary is called Windfall. It was produced by Laura Israel and Autumn Tarleton. I got it on Netflix. You've got to watch it. Unbelievable story. The communities next to it, the community of Lowville and Tug Hill, there in Delaware County. Not so lucky. Huge, huge tracts. Over 200 turbines in Tug Hill and Lowville alone. And we're talking, they are rural, they are farming communities, but everybody lives in these communities. Again, these towers aren't separated or far away. They're in people's backyards. People have to put up blankets in their windows. Regular shades, regular curtains don't work. They have to black out their windows.
Wow.
During the daytime, just to sit and watch TV or get some sleep. The roar is unbelievable. When it rains, it's even worse. And then there's a problem of fire. They're all made out of composite materials. They're not made out of metal or steel. The parts of them are, but they're mostly composite. The blades especially, carbon fiber mostly. Like a lot of modern airplanes are built today. When the nacelle catches fire, it's 300 to 600 feet up in the air. What local fire department in a town like Lowville or Tug Hill, that big, right, exactly. Yes, ma'am.
Catch fire.
Lightning strikes are the biggest one. I was going to cover that in a second. Lightning strikes are the biggest cause of them. And two reasons why lightning is attracted to them. One, obviously, that whole idea of something being high in the sky and out in the middle of nowhere. The nacelle, once it actually starts spinning, the nacelle is, like I said, it's the size of a city bus. If anybody's familiar with Star Trek, and the big nacelles on the side of the Enterprise, those are nacelles. What that is inside there are gears spinning. So as the turbine's spinning, there's gears spinning. That's what produces your electricity, goes down and goes into a battery or goes out into the grid. Okay? But that spinning creates an electromagnetic force, which is why when people go in to service it and work on it, they have to shut it down and let it stop. They can't go in. You go in there and you're basically inside of a giant CAT scan machine. Is what it is. So that's another reason why lightning strikes, is because you got an electrical force and then another electrical force. Eventually, they're going to. And yes, it catches fire. Other reasons why it catches fire is gearings wear out, poor maintenance, and I will cover that in a second. Wait to hear about the maintenance on this. It's virtually non-existent. So it can catch fire. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is there's no fire departments capable of doing this, capable of fighting these fires. They're left to burn out, and because they're composite materials, PCBs, toxins, BPH, all blowing into the atmosphere. Again, I thought we were supposed to be saving the atmosphere. Another wonderful problem, what happens in the wintertime? Well, what happens around here in the wintertime? We have these things called ice storms, right? Or it rains and then everything freezes at night. When that wind turbine starts up the next day and it's covered with a coat of ice, giant flying razor blades in the sky. Hey. Upwards of 1,500 feet away from the actual site itself. They've gone through windows, they've gone through roofs. Luckily, knock on wood, no injuries, no deaths, no injuries. Nothing recorded, I couldn't find anything. That too. 50,000 bats last year. Really? 50,000 bats on their migration, killed. Unbelievable. It gets worse in the fog too. When you're up on a mountaintop or in a valley area or wherever and it's foggy, birds can't see. Ducks, migrating ducks, they can't see. They're just like you and me. You know, they go by visual. Slam right into them because of the fog. Happens all the time. Thousands of animals. In fact, the roar is so bad that in some, let's see, it was in Hubbardston, Tennessee. There's a mountaintop site, and some of the people, who hike the woods and, did hunting up there for years and years, they can't find any game anymore because the roar is so bad. The land is cleared out. There's no deer. It's not like they killed the deer. No, the deer are like, screw this, I'm out of here. They're out of there. They quite literally. So there's no game. So we've got the ice flying off of the thing. Upwards of 10,000 gallons of petroleum are used in, say, a wind farm of maybe 200. And what did I say, Lowville and Tugville, they have upwards of 200 towers. 10,000 gallons of oil, lubricating oil, generator oil. And I thought we were supposed to use wind power to get off of oil.
Over what period of time?
Practically once a year. They have to replace, because like a car, we change our oil every 3,000 miles or whatever, but because of the use of the turbines and the huge massive gearing that's inside of there, they usually go up there once a year and they shut the thing down, they'll drain out all the oil, replace the lubricating oil and everything else in it, and then they start the thing back up. Which brings me to another great point. See, these wind turbines don't just spin when the wind blows. They have to be toggled on. Literally, you throw a switch. And that power comes off of the grid. It doesn't come from the battery set station at the wind tower. It doesn't come from the wind tower itself. It comes off of the grid. It's insane. It's completely insane. The rated capacity of an average wind tower, the best rated capacity is basically the maximum output that any electrical device does. 20 to 25%. And that's optimal conditions. A 30-mile-an-hour wind blowing constantly. You're only going to get about 25% electrical output from a standard tower. Not 50%, not 100%. And then, of course, because wind is so fickle, we know that you get 20 to 25%, and all the wind dies up, drops down to 10%. And it fluctuates back up again. And then there are days when the tower is just shut off because the wind isn't blowing. Very low percentage. I had some figures. Denmark, they average about 16%. England's pretty good. They do about 20%. Germany actually averages about 14%. All of their farms, and in fact, the percentage is so low that if you took an average tower. What ends up happening is they build the tower, they figure it'll take 25 years for that one tower to return the investment. And that's not just the money investment, that's an energy investment. We put up these towers, what? To save energy and get us off of oil, right? Well, between the construction, the use, the maintenance, everything that goes into it, one tower, 25 years before you see any return on either money or energy. How many of these did I say were out there? And that's just this variety. 50,000, let's just take the big number, 50,000 times 25 years.
And what are the chances that they won't last 25 years?
That brings me to my next point. These towers are not built to last. They're throwaways. They are throwaways. In fact, many of the investors who are building these towers and financing these towers are not only energy and oil and gas companies. So when people start saying, oh, the oil getting up, they're all involved in it. Trust me. Oil and gas is, they're just involved in wind power. The biggest investors, Wall Street bankers. Bear Stearns, Goldman Sachs, all of these guys, they're all in bed. They're all in bed with that.
Yeah. The tax credits?
Production tax credit. Interesting thing about the production tax credit, not only do you get the tax credit because you put up a wind tower, or say you own a manufacturing business and you put up a wind tower to offset your electrical or solar, you get that tax credit. What they've managed to slip into the production tax credit is accelerated depreciation. Okay, let's say you buy a wind tower, let's say you invest in a wind farm. and you put up 50 towers, you can start depreciating them immediately. It's worse than when you drive an automobile off the sales lot.
Yeah.
You immediately, and because you're depreciating it, you can actually get a kickback from the government because, wow, it's costing us so much money to maintain these towers. So we need more money. Now, you guys are going to lose your lunch. Let's say you sell that wind farm to another company. Guess what? That company can turn right around and start depreciating it all over again.
Tax credits.
Wonderful company. General Electric and our good friend Jeffrey Immelt, and I've been wanting to get to him. Jeffrey Immelt, I actually saw this on a 60 Minutes interview with Leslie Stahl, has essentially cornered the market for wind turbine production. He makes not only the nacelles and the components that go into it, he makes the blades. Okay? Most of that production is here in the United States. I got to give him credit for that. But what he's gone and done is one of the reasons why Jeffrey Immelt was able to position himself in that situation was, well, A, he gave about $20 million to the Obama-Biden campaign in 2008. And as a special thank you, in November of 2008, quite literally after the election, quite literally, suddenly GE manages to become FDIC insured. Now, what is FDIC? It's for banks, right? GE isn't a bank. Ooh, but wait a minute. There was a loophole in the stimulus bill. GE owned 2 small chain banks in Utah. Not like Bank of America or Chase, Wells Fargo, National Bank. 2, like Citizens Bank or something that we would have around here. Just 2 small chains in Utah. $139 million from the stimulus bill. What else has Jeffrey Immelt done? He shipped all our light bulb manufacturing to China or to Mexico. They corner the market there. In fact, shortly after the Obama election, Jeffrey Immelt sold off his healthcare subsidiaries to GE, but not before telling the senators so that they could all cash in their stocks. There's a great book by Robert Schweitzer called Throw Them All Out. It tells them all about the insider trading that's going on in Washington, D.C. Our good friend Senator Kerry made millions off of the GE swaps. Unbelievable. Gotta read the book. Gotta read the book. So GE sends all their manufacturing for heavy locomotives down to Brazil, and that leaves them in charge of mostly making light bulbs and wind power. He's also the job czar. And who makes up this council? CEOs, Wall Street bankers, and union representatives. The very people who got us in the mess in the first place. They're on the Obama Jobs Council.
Don't forget, GE paid no income tax.
And GE paid no income tax. Absolutely correct, sir. Absolutely correct. Now, so GE is perfectly positioned to put up all these turbines, and they do them all around the world. They ship them all around the world. The subsidies that exist from the federal government are worth more than the actual investments these people make. It averages about $3 million per turbine. $1 million comes from the feds, $1 million comes from the state. That leaves $1 million of the company itself, themselves to put up. But that's just seed money. They can write that off as taxes. They can get more subsidies with that $1 million. So they make their money not by the actual electrical production that they produce, because it's only anywhere from 15 to 25%. They make all their money from the subsidies. In Denmark, France, England, Germany, all of these countries that are huge European wind consumers, your electric bill is a huge surcharge because you're using alternative energy. Your bill isn't cheaper. It's kind of like Obamacare. It's not cheaper. It's not cleaner. It's not better. You're getting charged more for it. And it shows up every month in your bill. Interestingly enough, in countries like Denmark, 70% of the electricity produced by their entire wind farms is sold to another country. Just like when we drill for oil here in the United States, very few of us use our own oil. We sell it somewhere else. In 2003, in Denmark, what they did is they actually did a CO2 measurement of the local atmosphere. Despite everything that they had done to increase wind power, increase the farms going all over the country, CO2 still rose another 7.3%. Does very little to offset CO2.
We'll have questions informally just for the sake of time.
Thank you.
You're doing an incredible job, and Chris will be around with the So I learned a whole lot. I thought I knew a lot about it, but I learned a whole lot more. And by the way, I've been to Lowville, and it's awful. I mean, it's all rural. You got some quaint little farm stands there, and you see these wind turbines everywhere. So I can firsthand. But I traveled throughout the region, and I might not be in an area for 6 months. Bingo, there's a wind turbine. Cape Cod, Kingston, Massachusetts. Most of them are built around the dumps, the transfer stations, right? But people live pretty close to these things. Drive down Route 3, and you see these horrible, gigantic poisonous mushrooms, you know, around the area. So again, let's give them a nice warm up.